My name is Nadia Reeves. I'm 31 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse. I work 12-hour shifts, 3 days a week, caring for children who are sick in ways that would break most people's hearts. And then I go home to a one-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor of a building that smells like someone else's cooking and old carpet glue. At least I used to. This is the story of how I discovered that for 2 years, 730 days, my own family had been stealing from me. Not stealing small things. Not borrowing and forgetting. Stealing a life. The exact life I had worked myself to exhaustion to build. And how I took every single piece of it back. If you've ever trusted someone completely and had that trust used against you like a weapon, stay with me. Because this story is for you. Let me take you back to the day it started. Not the day I discovered the truth. The day the lie was planted, before I even knew there was a garden. My grandmother, Ruth Eleanor Reeves, was not a soft woman. She was 5'2", wore her silver hair in a bun so tight it looked like it required a level, and she ran her real estate business for 40 years without a single partner. She'd built it from nothing, one duplex she bought with her own savings in 1979, and then another, until she had 11 properties across 3 counties and a reputation that made contractors show up on time. She never missed a birthday. She never forgot a detail. She called every Sunday at 7 in the evening, and if you didn't pick up, she'd leave a voicemail so long it cut off before she finished. Grandma Ruth loved me in the specific, uncompromising way that certain grandmothers love the grandchildren they recognize something of themselves in. I was the one who came to the office after school. I was the one who filed her folders and listened to her explain cap rates and property taxes while eating a bag of pretzels at her desk. I was the one she called her shadow. When she passed 3 years ago, it was fast. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to the last voicemail she ever left me. A Sunday, 7 o'clock exactly, like always. Asterisk Nadia Bird. It's your grandmother. I just want you to know that I've thought of you. You were always the one who understood what I was building. I want you to have something. Something real. Something nobody can take from you. I've taken care of it. I love you, baby. Pick up the phone next time. Asterisk. I didn't know what she meant by I've taken care of it. Nobody told me. For 2 years, nobody said a word. I should tell you about my family. My mother, Patricia Reeves, is the kind of woman who makes every room feel slightly smaller. Not because she's cruel. She'd tell you herself that she's the most generous person she's ever met, and she'd believe it. She's been telling people what to do since before I was born, and she has a gift for making her preferences sound like your idea, her decisions sound like your choices, and her demands sound like love. My Uncle Dennis Reeves, my grandmother's son, my mother's brother, is quieter than my mother but made of the same material. He nods at everything she says. He has for 50 years. He calls it loyalty. I call it a mirror that only reflects what it's told to. My cousin Marcus, Dennis's son, is 28 and has never held a job for longer than a year and a half. He drives a new car every 18 months and refers to everyone in our family as bro, including my grandmother, which she found deeply offensive, which is one reason I loved him the least. This is the cast of characters. Remember them. The day I found out, I was eating lunch at the hospital. Turkey sandwich, vending machine coffee, the break room with the flickering light that maintenance had been promising to fix for 2 years. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Is this Nadia Reeves? Who's asking? My name is Harold Benton. I'm an attorney. I represent the estate of Ruth Eleanor Reeves. A pause. I believe we have some urgent business to discuss. I set down my sandwich. Ms. Reeves, were you aware that your grandmother set up an irrevocable trust naming you as the sole beneficiary of a property she owned at 412 Sycamore Drive? The break room light flickered. I wasn't aware of any trust. I see. Another pause, longer. Ms. Reeves, that property has been occupied and rented for the past 24 months. The rental income has been collected and deposited into a private bank account. Your name is on the trust documents as the beneficiary. Your name is on none of the rental agreements. And the account receiving the income, it doesn't belong to you. I said nothing. The fluorescent light buzzed above me. Ms. Reeves, are you there? Who does the account belong to? Harold Benton cleared his throat. Patricia and Dennis Reeves. My mother. My uncle. I put the phone down on the table, picked up my coffee, put it down again. The break room was empty except for the sound of a cart being pushed down the hallway outside. Wheels squeaking in that specific hospital rhythm that I'd heard so many thousands of times it had become the background noise of my entire adult life. I picked the phone back up. Tell me everything, I said. Part 2. The architecture of a lie. Harold Benton's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Real wood furniture. The kind of office that makes you unconsciously sit up straighter. He was 60-something, careful worded, with the particular gentleness of a man who has delivered bad news many, many times and has learned that the kindest way to do it is with complete accuracy. He opened a leather folder and turned it toward me. My grandmother's handwriting. The last document she'd signed, 11 days before she died. An irrevocable trust. Naming you as the sole beneficiary of a property she owned at 412 Sycamore Drive. The break room light flickered. I wasn't aware of any trust. I see. Another pause longer. Ms. Reeves, that property has been occupied and rented for the past 24 months. The rental income has been collected and deposited into a private bank account. Your name is on the trust documents as the beneficiary. Your name is on none of the rental agreements. And the account receiving the income, it doesn't belong to you. I said nothing. The fluorescent light buzzed above me. Ms. Reeves, are you there? Who does the account belong to? Harold Benton cleared his throat. Patricia and Dennis Reeves. My mother. My uncle. I put the phone down on the table, picked up my coffee, put it down again. The break room was empty except for the sound of a cart being pushed down the hallway outside. Wheels squeaking in that specific hospital rhythm that I'd heard so many thousands of times it had become the background noise of my entire adult life. I picked the phone back up. Tell me everything, I said. Part 2. The architecture of a lie. Harold Benton's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Real wood furniture. The kind of office that makes you unconsciously sit up straighter. He was 60-something, careful worded, with the particular gentleness of a man who has delivered bad news many, many times and has learned that the kindest way to do it is with complete accuracy. He opened a leather folder and turned it toward me. My grandmother's handwriting. The last document she'd signed, 11 days before she died. An irrevocable trust. Property at 412 Sycamore Drive, a 4-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood 20 minutes from where I worked. The beneficiary line read, Nadia Elaine Reeves, granddaughter sole and complete. The house was mine. Had been mine for 2 years. Your grandmother gave your mother the trust documents, Harold said. She trusted her to pass them to you directly once the estate was settled. She didn't. No, she didn't. And in the meantime? Harold turned to the next page. I looked at numbers. My eyes moved across them the way your eyes move across something they don't quite believe they're seeing. Monthly rent collected. $2,400. Duration, 26 months. Total, $62,400. This is the account the money was deposited into, Harold said, sliding another sheet toward me. Joint account. Patricia Reeves and Dennis Reeves. I did not cry. I am a pediatric nurse. Crying is something I do privately after. In the moment, I become very still. There's more, Harold said. There's always more. He turned to the third page. A home equity line of credit, opened 13 months ago. My name. My social security number. My supposed signature. My signature wasn't mine. I knew it the moment I saw it. The N in Nadia had a loop I never made. The R was too careful. My grandmother used to say I wrote like I was in a hurry. This signature was from someone taking their time, imitating. Amount of the line of credit. $40,000. Where did it go? Harold turned to the fourth page. $15,000 to a contracting company. The same month my mother had posted photos on Facebook of her completely renovated kitchen finally, with a caption that said God is good. $12,000 to a Visa account registered to Dennis Reeves. $8,500 to a car dealership. And $4,500 I stared at this one the longest, to Marcus Reeves. The same Marcus who had texted me the previous November. Asterisk hey cuz, really rough month. Any way you could loan me a couple hundred? Just till payday asterisk. I had sent him $200 from my own account, while $4,500 of money fraudulently taken from my property was sitting in his. Total, Harold said quietly. Between the rent and the line of credit, approximately $102,400 has been misappropriated from the property held in trust for you. $102,000. I had been living on a nurse's salary, a good salary, don't misunderstand me. A salary I was proud of, supplementing it with extra shifts, skipping vacations, keeping an eye on every credit card statement, falling asleep 3 times in the last 2 years on my couch still in my scrubs because the double shifts were the only way to build any kind of savings cushion. $102,000. What are my options? I asked. Harold Benton folded his hands. You can file a fraud complaint with the district attorney. You can file a civil suit for full restitution. You can notify the bank that issued the HELOC and trigger their own investigation. He paused. And you can reclaim your property, which is currently occupied by tenants who had no knowledge of the situation, and have been paying rent in good faith. How long until the tenants would need to leave? With proper notice, 60 days under state statute. Start the process, I said. All of it. Harold nodded once. He picked up his pen. There's one other thing, I said. Yes. Is there any legal reason I couldn't attend my family's upcoming reunion? My mother's been planning it for 6 months. The entire extended family will be there. Harold looked at me carefully. That's not a legal matter, he said. No, I agreed. It's a personal one. I am organized in the specific way that comes from caring for sick children. When you work in pediatric nursing, you learn that details matter, that information saved is information available, that the difference between a good outcome and a catastrophic one is sometimes a single note written in the right column at the right time. You don't improvise. You document. I bought a large accordion folder from an office supply store on my way home from Harold's office. Bright red. The color was intentional. I needed to be able to find it fast, and I needed it to feel serious every time I opened it. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, and I built the case. Section 1. The trust documents. Harold had given me certified copies, embossed seal, notarized every page initialed. My grandmother's handwriting on the signature line. The date, 11 days before she died. Section 2. Property records. County recorder documents showing 412 Sycamore Drive. The rental agreements filed under my name, forged signature, that careful loop on the end that wasn't mine. The HELOC filing. Section 3. Financial records. The bank statements Harold had obtained. The 26 months of deposits. The line of credit draws. The contractor invoice. The car dealership receipt. The transfers to Marcus. Section 4. My own records. 2 years of pay stubs. Credit card statements showing every careful purchase. The extra shifts on my timesheets. 3 separate occasions I had asked my mother for a loan to cover apartment expenses, small amounts, $500, $300, $800, and had been told each time that money was tight, that she wished she could help, that I needed to be more responsible with my budget. I added those text messages to Section 4. Honey, I just don't have it right now. You know how tight things have been. Dated the same month as an $8,000 kitchen renovation funded by my property. I think you need to learn to manage better. I worry about you. From the week after a $12,000. That hallway, and then another, and you walk through each one and find something you'd explained away for years suddenly holding still long enough for you to actually look at it. I was 15 when I won an essay contest. The prize was a $500 savings bond. My mother kept it safe for me. When I turned 18 and asked for it, she said she'd had to use it during a tight month when I was 13. 2 years before I'd won it. When I pointed this out, she cried and said I was making her feel like a bad mother, and my Uncle Dennis told me to let it go. She did her best. I let it go. I was 19 and in nursing school. I had a scholarship that covered 60% of tuition. The other 40% I took out in loans, Federal, subsidized. The kind you pay back starting 6 months after graduation. My mother had a college fund set up, she told me, for years. I asked about it twice. Both times she said I'm handling it. I graduated and started paying my own loans. When I asked about the fund years later, she said it hadn't grown the way she hoped, and it was basically nothing. I didn't push. I never pushed. I was 24 and just starting my career. I needed a car, not a new car, a used car, reliable enough to get to the hospital. I asked if I could borrow $3,000 for 6 months, while I saved up the rest. My mother said she simply didn't have it. Marcus, at that same family Christmas, was driving a 3-year-old Audi that Dennis had co-signed for him. I bought a 12-year-old Honda. I loved that Honda. I drove it for 5 years. It never let me down. But here's what I understand now, lying in my apartment at midnight with a red accordion folder on my kitchen table. Those incidents weren't separate events. They were a pattern. They were a system. And that system had one rule at its center, one operating principle that explained every single thing. There was always something for Marcus. There was always something for Dennis. There was always a renovation, a vacation, a new purchase, a family investment that my mother managed and my uncle nodded along to. And whenever I reached out my hand, there was nothing. Every single time. I wasn't the black sheep. I was the resource. The one whose practicality and independence and capability, all compliments they'd given me for years, were the justification for taking from me. Because I could handle it. Because I was responsible. Because I didn't need the way other people needed. The essay contest prize. The college fund. The loan I never got. The Hawaii contract I never took. And now, a house my grandmother gave me, that I'd never set foot in, that had been funding their comfort for 2 years while I ate vending machine lunches and picked up extra shifts. I was done handling it. I closed my laptop. I looked at the folder. I thought about the family reunion. My mother had been planning it for 6 months. Every year our extended family, aunts, cousins, her church friends who'd become so embedded in family events they felt like relatives, gathered at my mother's house for a summer cookout that she organized with the same authority she brought to everything. She cooked for 3 days in advance. She assigned dishes to everyone else. She curated the guest list like she was producing a film. This year, she had sent me the invitation on embossed cardstock. Asterisk, join us for the Reeves family summer reunion, a celebration of family, love, and the bonds. Bonds that hold us together. Asterisk. I had the invitation in section 5, between Marcus's Instagram and her Facebook kitchen post. ## part 5, the preparation. I called Harold the next morning and asked 3 questions. First, was there anything legally preventing me from attending a family gathering and sharing factual, documented information about an active civil and criminal matter? He said no. Free speech. Documented facts. Second, was the state a one-party consent state for recorded conversations? Yes. Third, was a certified letter deliverable by hand rather than mail? Yes. Certified meant witnessed and documented. It didn't require the postal service. Are you planning something? Harold asked. I'm planning to introduce myself, I said. They think they know who I am. They don't. Harold was quiet for a moment. Nadia, he said. Whatever you're considering, make sure the documentation is complete first. Make sure you're not walking in with emotion and walking out without anything actionable. I've been a pediatric nurse for 8 years, I said. I don't act on emotion. I act on information. The emotion comes after. He was quiet again. I'll have the certified letter ready Thursday, he said. I had 2 weeks until the reunion. I used them. I contacted the tenants at 412 Sycamore Drive through Harold properly by the book. They were a couple in their early 30s, renters who'd been paying $2,400 a month faithfully for over 2 years to a woman named Patricia Reeves who told them she owned the property as an investment. They were stunned. They were cooperative. They were also victims. They'd paid rent in good faith to someone who had no authority to collect it. Harold arranged for their deposit to be returned, funded by the estate's resources. He issued their 60-day notice. They found a new place within 3 weeks. Good people. Wrong place. I drove to 412 Sycamore Drive on a Tuesday afternoon. I sat in my car across the street. The house was on a street lined with oak trees, the kind that had been there long enough to form a canopy over the road, so that even in summer it felt shaded and cool. The house itself was a craftsman style. Wide porch, stone steps, dark green shutters, a climbing rose along the front fence that someone had been tending because it was full and carefully trained up the trellis. My grandmother had bought this rose. I knew because I remembered her saying once years ago, "I bought a house with a climbing rose on the fence and I thought, whoever lives there someday is going to wake up every morning and see that rose and feel like the world is on their side." She'd bought it for me. I sat in my car and looked at the climbing rose and let myself feel it for exactly 4 minutes. Then I started the car and drove to work. That was the only time I allowed myself to cry before the reunion. I started keeping notes. Every interaction with my mother, every text, every call, logged in a small notebook I kept in my bag. Not because I thought anything new would happen, because the discipline of documentation is the discipline of being taken seriously. You cannot be gaslit if you have the receipts. You cannot be told you're misremembering if you have the dates. My mother texted 3 times in those 2 weeks. First text. Asterisk. Nadia, are you bringing a dish to the reunion? I need to know by Friday so I can plan the table. Asterisk. Second text. Asterisk. You never confirmed. Your Aunt Helen is asking about you. Asterisk. Third text, 5 days before the reunion. Asterisk. I heard you've been in contact with some attorney. I don't know what you think you're doing, but I hope you're not going to do something you'll regret. Family is family. Asterisk. I screenshot all 3. Added them to section 4. I did not respond to any of them. The night before the reunion, I laid everything out on my kitchen table. The red accordion folder. The certified letter Harold had prepared. 4 pages, formal letterhead, red stamp across the front reading certified. My phone, charged to 100%. My voice recorder app, tested and ready. An extra folder containing printed copies of the key documents, organized with numbered tabs. I looked at the table for a long time. Here is what I knew. I was about to walk into a room of people who had been given a version of me that didn't exist. The struggling one. The difficult one. The one who couldn't manage her money, who was always asking for things, who didn't appreciate her family. My mother had been building that version of me for years. Not with dramatic speeches, but with the slow, consistent drip of small comments. She's going through a lot. She's always been independent to a fault. We try, but you know Nadia. 30 people, maybe more. All of them with a picture of me that wasn't mine. I owed them the real one. I picked out what I would wear. Dark slacks, white blouse, the blazer I wore for serious meetings. No jewelry. Nothing that could be read as performing. Just clean, professional, and impossible to dismiss as dramatic. I set an alarm for 7 in the morning. I went to bed. I did not sleep, but I lay still, which is almost the same thing. ## part 6, the reunion. My mother's house on reunion day looks like a movie set. She has a gift for presentation. This I'll give her. Tablecloths, real ones. Flowers from the garden arranged in pitchers. Catered barbecue from a place she'd been using for 15 years. A banner across the porch. Reeves family reunion in balloon letters, gold and red. Cars lined both sides of the street. I could hear the party from the driveway. I sat in my car for 90 seconds. I counted my breaths. I picked up the accordion folder and the certified letter and I got out. The backyard was full. 35 people, maybe more. Aunts and cousins and church friends and neighbors who'd known my mother for decades. Card tables and lawn chairs and a cooler the size of a small boat. My Uncle Dennis was by the grill. My cousin Marcus was by the cooler, beer in hand, sunglasses on, the new car, the one funded by money taken from my property, parked conspicuously in the street where everyone could see it. And my mother. She was in the center of all of it, the way she always was, wearing a yellow dress and her church best smile, working the crowd with the ease of a woman who had been performing warmth her entire life. When she saw me, the smile stayed in place, but her eyes went a different direction. She crossed the yard to me before anyone else could. Nadia. Arms out. The hug that smells like her perfume. The one that's been the same my whole life. I'm so glad you came. You look tired, honey. Are you sleeping enough? This is how it starts. Always with a concern that isn't. Mom. I didn't hug her back. Her arms dropped. She stepped back and looked at the folder under my arm. What is that? Very quiet. Something I'll explain shortly. Her voice dropped lower. Whatever you're planning, I need you to think about this family before you do something foolish in front of everyone. I looked at her. I've been thinking about this family, I said. For 2 years. That's the problem. I walked past her into the center of the yard. Conversation ebbed. The way it does when someone enters a space with a particular kind of energy. People glanced. Some smiled. Cousins I hadn't seen in a year. My Aunt Helen, who was already walking toward me with her arms open. I hugged Aunt Helen. I meant it. She had nothing to do with this. I set the folder on the main table, between the potato salad and a pitcher of lemonade. $40,000 drawn against the value of a house I didn't know I owned. I paused. That money paid for a kitchen renovation, a car credit card debt, and I looked at Marcus, for $1,500 that went to this account. Marcus took off his sunglasses. I have the bank statements, I said. I have the forged HELOC application. I have the lease agreement signed with a forgery of my signature. I have 26 months of deposit records. And I reached into the folder. I have a certified letter, prepared by my attorney, summarizing the fraud complaint currently filed with the district attorney's office and the civil suit for full restitution of $102,000. I set the letter on the table. White envelope. Red certified stamp. Harold's firm name in clean serif font. Nobody moved. My mother's voice, when it came, was high and fractured in a way I had never heard before. You're twisting this. You're making it sound like something it isn't. I was managing the property. I was protecting it until you were ready. Ready. I turned to face her. Mom. You watched me pick up extra shifts for 2 years to cover the rent on an apartment I didn't need to rent. You watched me turn down a career opportunity because I calculated I couldn't afford the transition costs. You told me to budget better. I let that sit. While $62,000 that belonged to me sat in your account. You don't understand how property management. I understand exactly how it works. I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a single sheet. This is a court order filed by my attorney on Wednesday. It terminates any legal standing your side of the family has over any assets connected to the Reeves estate. I set it on top of the envelope. I'm not here to punish you in front of this family, I said. I'm here because for 2 years, you told this family a story about me, that I was struggling. $40,000 drawn against the value of a house I didn't know I owned. I paused. That money paid for a kitchen renovation, a car credit card debt, and I looked at Marcus, for $1,500 that went to this account. Marcus took off his sunglasses. I have the bank statements, I said. I have the forged HELOC application. I have the lease agreement signed with a forgery of my signature. I have 26 months of deposit records. And I reached into the folder. I have a certified letter, prepared by my attorney, summarizing the fraud complaint currently filed with the district attorney's office and the civil suit for full restitution of $102,000. I set the letter on the table. White envelope. Red certified stamp. Harold's firm name in clean serif font. Nobody moved. My mother's voice, when it came, was high and fractured in a way I had never heard before. You're twisting this. You're making it sound like something it isn't. I was managing the property. I was protecting it until you were ready. Ready. I turned to face her. Mom. You watched me pick up extra shifts for 2 years to cover the rent on an apartment I didn't need to rent. You watched me turn down a career opportunity because I calculated I couldn't afford the transition costs. You told me to budget better. I let that sit. While $62,000 that belonged to me sat in your account. You don't understand how property management. I understand exactly how it works. I reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a single sheet. This is a court order filed by my attorney on Wednesday. It terminates any legal standing your side of the family has over any assets connected to the Reeves estate. I said it on top of the envelope. I'm not here to punish you in front of this family, I said. I'm here because for 2 years, you told this family a story about me, that I was struggling, irresponsible, difficult, always asking for things. You built that story carefully, so that when this day came, I would already be the problem, and you would already be the solution. I looked around the yard. Aunt Helen, the church friends, the cousins. I want you to hear the real story. I'm the one who's been working doubles on the pediatric ward. I'm the one who's been driving a 12-year-old Honda and eating vending machine lunches. And I'm the one whose grandmother tried to give her something stable and real, which was taken before I ever knew it existed. The yard was very, very quiet. Somewhere, a child laughed from inside the house, unaware. Dennis spoke. His voice was strained. This is between family. You don't air family business at a family event. You made it a family event, I said. You built the lie in front of this family. You asked all these people to believe a version of me that served your story. So yes, I'm airing it here, in front of the same people. I closed the folder. I looked at my mother. She was standing very still. The yellow dress, the careful hair, the garden flowers in the pictures. Everything she had arranged. I don't hate you, I said. And I meant it. I've spent the last 2 weeks making sure I didn't act out of hatred, because hatred makes mistakes and I cannot afford mistakes. This isn't about hating you. I paused. It's about making sure that what you did is seen clearly, by everyone, so that the version of me you built in this family can finally be replaced with the actual one. My mother opened her mouth. My Aunt Helen, my father's sister, technically the one member of this extended gathering who had never been inside my mother's particular orbit, spoke before she could. Patricia. Aunt Helen's voice was quiet. She was looking at my mother with an expression I can only describe as the look of a woman watching something fall that she always suspected might fall. Is it true? The property. The account. My mother's chin lifted. This is complicated, and Nadia doesn't have the full. Is it true? Helen said again. The silence that followed was my answer for her. Part 7 after. Here is what doesn't happen in the movies. There's no dramatic storm out. No screaming that clarifies everything. No tearful confession that makes it all make sense. What actually happened? The reunion deflated like a slow puncture. People drifted. Conversations broke apart. The barbecue sat getting cold on the table, and nobody seemed to have an appetite anymore. Aunt Helen sat with me at a corner table and held my hand and said nothing, which was exactly right. 2 of my cousins, young women I didn't know well, daughters of a great aunt on my grandmother's side, came over and said we always wondered and I'm so sorry, and that meant more than I expected. My mother went inside. Dennis left early. Marcus sat by the cooler until he realized nobody was coming to stand near him. And then he left too. I stayed for an hour. I ate a plate of food, because I was hungry and I'd earned it. And I talked to Aunt Helen about my grandmother, about the climbing rose on the fence of 412, Sycamore Drive, about what I was going to do with the house. Move in? Helen asked. Move in, I confirmed. She squeezed my hand. I left before dark. I sat in my car in the street. The balloon banner on the porch had gone slack in the evening air. The gold and red letters of Reeves' family reunion drooping at one end where the tape had loosened. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be honest about this because this is the part that stories like mine sometimes skip. I did not feel triumphant. I felt a kind of grief that was specific and heavy in the way that grief is when you're not grieving what you lost but what was never real to begin with. My mother didn't fail to love me because of the money. The money was just how I could prove it. I drove home. I showered. I made tea. I sat at my kitchen table with the red accordion folder, and I thought about my grandmother, who had tried to give me something nobody could take, and who had trusted the wrong person to deliver it. She'd told me, in that last voicemail, you were always the one who understood what I was building. I think she meant the properties, the business, the methodical accumulation of something real. But sitting there, I thought maybe she meant something else too. I think she meant, you know how to hold on to things. She was right. Part 8 Resolution. The legal process is not fast. I want to be clear about this, because if anyone watching this is in a similar situation, I don't want you to think that the confrontation at the party was the end. It was the beginning of the end. The actual end took months. Harold moved through each step with the patience and precision of someone who has done this many times. The civil suit was filed. Patricia and Dennis were served. The DA's office received the fraud complaint. The forgery charge, HELOC application with forged signatures, forged identification documents, was serious. Class C felony. Their attorney called Harold within 10 days. The word he used, Harold told me later with just the faintest curl at the edge of his mouth, was devastating. The bank that issued the HELOC opened its own investigation the moment Harold's letter arrived. They froze the credit line. They launched their internal process. They were not happy. 6 weeks after the reunion, I received an offer to settle. Harold walked me through it on the phone. I was in the hospital parking lot, engine off, between a double shift and a department meeting. The sun was going down. The sky was doing that thing it does in late summer where the orange sits on the horizon for a long time. Full restitution of $102,400. Paid in structured payments over 36 months. With a lien on the property they'd used part of the money to renovate as. I had very little furniture. You accumulate less when you're renting and managing carefully and never quite settling. A bed. A good bookshelf. My grandmother's writing desk, which I'd kept in storage, which turned out to be exactly the right size for the alcove beneath the front window. I put the desk there on the first day. I put the red accordion folder in the bottom drawer of the desk. Not as a trophy. As a record. A document of the thing that happened, kept the way my grandmother kept her property records. Organized, accessible, permanent. Because the past doesn't go away when you're done with it, but you can put it somewhere it doesn't take up the whole room. Aunt Helen came for dinner the first Saturday. She brought a plant for the kitchen windowsill. A rosemary plant, practical and beautiful, she said, which was the best possible description of what anything in my grandmother's orbit always was. We ate at the kitchen table with the window open, and the smell of the climbing rose coming in with the evening air, and we talked about my grandmother. About the duplex she'd bought in 1979. About the way she explained cap rates to an 8-year-old who was eating pretzels at her desk. About the Sunday voicemails. She knew, Aunt Helen said. That's why she set up the irrevocable trust instead of just leaving you the property directly. She knew she couldn't control who'd carry the documents, but she could control the legal structure around them. She did everything she could to make it yours. She trusted my mother. She loved her daughter and she didn't know, Helen said. Those aren't the same thing. I thought about that for a long time. They're not the same thing. 6 months in, I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was broken. Because I wanted to understand the years of okay, Mom, the habit of swallowing, of adjusting, of making myself smaller so there'd be room for everyone else's needs in the space I was supposed to occupy. That understanding came slowly. It's still coming. What I know so far. I learned to make myself invisible because visible things get taken. What belongs to you can't be taken if nobody knows it's yours. The irony being that the one thing my grandmother gave me, a house, a physical structure, the most visible kind of belonging there is, was taken precisely because I didn't know it was mine to claim. I'm learning to claim things now. My mother called once. Through a cousin she'd recruited as an intermediary. A technical violation of the no-contact order, which I documented and chose not to pursue because the call itself told me everything I needed to know. She said, she's sorry. She made mistakes. She hopes someday I'll understand that she did what she thought was best. I have thought about that sentence a great deal. What she thought was best. For whom? I think the answer is that she genuinely doesn't separate the two, what's best for her and what's best for the family she presides over. She believes they're the same category. She has always believed this. It's what makes her impossible to reach and impossible to blame in the simple way you'd blame a stranger. She's not a villain in her own story. She's the protagonist. We all are. The question is whether the story you're telling is true. I haven't called her back. Maybe someday. The choice is mine now. That's new. ## epilogue. What I want you to know. This past October, I was sitting at my grandmother's desk. My desk now, grading some continuing education modules I'd been putting off, when I heard the climbing rose tap against the window in the wind. I looked up. The rose had gone into its fall state. Not dead, just dormant, saving itself, pulling back to the cane and holding there. It would come back. It always did. My grandmother bought this rose. She planned the garden for someone she loved. She was right that I'd see it every morning and feel like the world. That understanding came slowly. It's still coming. What I know so far. I learned to make myself invisible because visible things get taken. What belongs to you can't be taken if nobody knows it's yours. The irony being that the one thing my grandmother gave me, a house, a physical structure, the most visible kind of belonging there is, was taken precisely because I didn't know it was mine to claim. I'm learning to claim things now. My mother called once. Through a cousin she'd recruited as an intermediary. A technical violation of the no-contact order, which I documented and chose not to pursue because the call itself told me everything I needed to know. She said, * she's sorry. She made mistakes. She hopes someday I'll understand that she did what she thought was best. *. I have thought about that sentence a great deal. What she thought was best. For whom? I think the answer is that she genuinely doesn't separate the two, what's best for her and what's best for the family she presides over. She believes they're the same category. She has always believed this. It's what makes her impossible to reach and impossible to blame in the simple way you'd blame a stranger. She's not a villain in her own story. She's the protagonist. We all are. The question is whether the story you're telling is true. I haven't called her back. Maybe someday. The choice is mine now. That's new. ## epilogue. What I want you to know. This past October, I was sitting at my grandmother's desk. My desk now, grading some continuing education modules I'd been putting off, when I heard the climbing rose tap against the window in the wind. I looked up. The rose had gone into its fall state. Not dead, just dormant, saving itself, pulling back to the cane and holding there. It would come back. It always did. My grandmother bought this rose. She planned the garden for someone she loved. She was right that I'd see it every morning and feel like the world was on my side. She was right about that, and she was right about me. That I was the one who understood what she was building. That I had the patience and the discipline and the specific stubbornness it takes to hold on to things. Here's what I want you to take from my story, if you're going to take anything. Documentation is not paranoia. It's self-respect in written form. If someone in your life gives you reason to keep records, keep records. If something feels wrong, write it down. Date it. Save it. Not because you're planning for war. Because information is the only thing that can't be taken from you once you have it. And this, you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to perform your grief or your anger for it to be legitimate. The most devastating thing I did in that backyard wasn't raising my voice. It was staying calm. Because calm is what truth sounds like when it doesn't need anyone to believe it. It just needs to be said. I used to think protecting myself was the same as being ungrateful. That claiming what's mine was the same as being difficult. That my independence, the thing they used as justification for taking from me, was something I should apologize for. I don't think that anymore. This house is mine. My grandmother built it for me. I came home late. But I'm here. And I'm staying. If this story stayed with you, if you've ever had the thing you trusted someone with used against you, if you've ever made yourself small so someone else could feel big, if you've ever said okay when you meant no, I see you. You're not alone. And you don't have to stay small to keep the peace. Sometimes the most important thing you can do for the peace is disrupt it. * subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment below. I want to know. What was the moment you finally stopped saying okay? *. I'll see you in the next one.